Okay, hold on, pause, no. Cancel, pause.
Ready? Okay, so we'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. We would like to do a roll call now.
Okay, April Grimes. Here. Lisa Jenkins.
Here.
Tom Reynolds.
Here.
And Tamara can't be here, but we do have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. So there's one agenda item today, but we have a public forum. Does anybody have any topics that they want to raise that are not on the agenda? Nope. Okay, so we are on to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was a year ago. It's hard to believe, over a year ago. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 7th? Motion. Okay. I'll second the motion.
Okay.
You made it. All right, so all in favor of approving the minutes from February 7th, 2023 ARB board meeting? Aye. I think it's over to you, Brad.
Thank you. Again, just for the record, my name is Brad Cornelius Way-Trip, and I serve as your contractor town planner. And also wanted to let you know, my other planner, Sarah, Way-Trip, she acted as the reviews here. So she's here as well. This item. So what we have before you this evening is this is for your review and a recommendation on specific design guidelines and architectural standards for the Briley Farm development. And that's what we're asking you to provide your recommendation on this evening. Next, please.
Maybe.
So this gives you a little bit of the history of this project. And I will tell you, for us, it took us a while to grasp our arms around the history of this project. So Briley Farm, as I'm sure you all are aware, has been a project that's been in process for the last couple of years. And it's been approved in pieces and parts over the time. So the way it's currently kind of set up is you have Briley Farms Phase 1A, and what you see on the map there is that's that area outlined in yellow. What that was approved by the town back in 2021, and that was a simple replat of existing platted lots here in the town, where at that time, what happened with the ownership at that time was they combined lots, they recreated some right-of-ways that weren't there any longer and kind of restructured that area. But it wasn't basically a brand new subdivision or anything like that. It was just redoing the lots. So you have that as Phase 1A. Then in 2022, to the north of that is Phase 1B. That came through the town as a preliminary subdivision plan, straight zoning. It doesn't have a plan development zoning on it or anything like that. It has straight zoning on that property. And that was approved by the town commission in 2022, and that has 27 lots within that part of Briley Farms, but it was a separate approval of Phase 1A. So we have 1A and 1B. The red piece that Elise is pointing out, that is now what's known currently as Daniels Cove. Daniels Cove was also a replat that was approved by the town commission back in 2022, actually right when we first started working here with the town. And that's an existing 8 lots that are here in the town, originally platted lots. What happened in 2022, they broke them back out to those 8 lots and had them approved that way. At that time, Daniels Cove didn't have at least a known connection to us or the town to Briley Farms. However, that is now tied with Briley Farm. So that's why this little thing called Daniels Cove is part of what you have before you this evening. And then the last piece that you see on here is phase two. That's the biggest piece of the Briley Farm development. That was also approved in 2022 by the town commission. That does have a plan development zoning on it, and that does have a development agreement with it. And it's comprised of 111 lots. This phase two is not part of what you would be considering tonight, because Briley Land Holdings, Mr. Healy, who's here this evening, he, as far as I know, he doesn't own that yet. I believe that will be happening, but does not control that property yet. So what you have before you this evening would apply to phase 1A, 1B, and Daniels Cove. Those three pieces. It's my understanding what will happen once they do take control of phase two, there'll be an amendment to phase two to bring this all together under one project, one set of standards, which working as your staff will be highly beneficial, because it's very difficult right now to track these three different pieces and parts. The other thing that why this is coming forward, and this was something that I think was just not ever intended, but there was never special design standards or guidelines or for Briley Farm ever actually approved by the town. What was interesting when we went through this exercise, that phase two piece in that development agreement did reference a standard, did reference a pattern book that was being approved for Briley Farm. And it said that the town clerk had it in their office, in their records. It doesn't exist. It never actually got developed. It never actually got approved. We did back checking. We talked to the previous applicant. We spoke with their attorney, and everybody agreed and said, yes, it never actually happened. So there was, I think, an understanding by some folks, probably including the developer, that there were already approvals for their own design standards there. What triggered this was on phase 1A, Mr. Healy started submitting some concept plans for preliminary reviews. And when we were trying to apply your standards within your design guidelines that you already have adopted within your land development code, they don't fit to the kinds of homes that they want to build there. And so we had an issue with that. The other issue that was identified, I'll say very briefly, but there'll probably be more discussion about this later, is we've also identified within your design guidelines, there's internal conflicts, there's words in there that don't match pictures. There's a lot of issues within those design guidelines that you currently have adopted. So that's a bigger discussion for another day. But we had a large meeting with Elise. We had the input of the town attorney with Mr. Healy and his group to figure out what was the best way to get through this disconnect between what they were trying to build there, because we do believe what they're trying to build there is consistent with what the town ideal is and what your standards are and what kind of development you're looking for. That doesn't fit with your design guidelines. And also the issue that there are things that need to be fixed in your design guidelines, but really don't apply to what they're trying to do. There's other issues. So the best solution we all agreed was for them to come in to rezone these three pieces of 1A, 1B, and Daniels Cove. Because as I said earlier, they're all straight zoning right now. Rezone those all three to plan development, and then adopt a development agreement that would cover those three pieces, where all it's going to do is it's going to adopt these proposed, if you all are comfortable and the planning and zoning commission board and the town commission's comfortable, adopt the proposed design standards and architectural standards that are before you this evening to apply within that project. That development agreement won't change any of the previous approvals in terms of the number of lots or the type of development that would happen. All of those pieces would still stay in place. All the requirements for infrastructure, everything that was already approved by the town won't change. The one caveat I will say to that is on Daniels Cove. What will change from what was previously approved? Before it was connected to Briley Farms, when they were doing those 8 lots, they were oriented north-south on that property. But now that it's connected to Briley Farms and they're actually going to have a shared access with Briley Farms, the lots will be oriented east-west instead of north-south. But the number of lots stay the same. It's still 8 lots. It's just they're reorienting them from north-south to east-west. That's really the only change from anything that was previously approved by the town. So that's the history of how we got here this evening. Mr. Healy will probably have a bigger story about that. We had a lot of discussion and a lot of work with him and his crew. Next, please. So how this is set up is in this book, in this design guidelines that I have before you this evening, is, so I actually probably said a lot of this already. But is basically what they're doing is they're setting up within those areas, specific lot requirements, specific house design requirements for the different lots and what they're identifying as lot types within this Briley Farm development. And in order for allow them to do that, that's why we have to go through this process. We have to do a development agreement, give them that specific approval to do something different than what the town has. And that's why it's before you all this evening, because it is different than what your design standards say. And that's why you all are reviewing it and asking for your recommendation on this. And that's why it's before you. And again, I already said that we're not changing any of the underlying approvals that already occurred. Next, please. I'm going to go real high level. I'll let Steve and his team get real detailed on it. So what they're doing is very similar, I'll say at the outset, to what the town approved in Oakland Park for their planned development. So within their development, which you see there on the map on the right, that would be covered by what we're speaking about this evening. They have 4 different lot types. And those lot types, the way they set them up, it's based on their character and where they're located in the proximity. Like you can see the lot types that are up there on the north end by Lake Apopka. Those have their own lot type for certain house type, certain lot development. Over on the right side where Daniels Cove is, those have their own lot type because those are a little bit small. Those are smaller lots than what's in the rest of it. So the way this is set up, it has specific standards for specific lots within the community, very similar to what's set up in Oakland Park. And from our standard, when we look at it from a review, we think this is very helpful because it gives a finer grain detail about what a lot is and the different characteristics of it, as opposed to just a larger scale kind of overlay when we look at design standards. So that's how that is set up with the lots. Next, please. Like I said, I'm going real high level. I'll let them get into the details. In terms of the house types. So again, what they're doing is, like your code right now talks about the Florida vernacular and it has its standard of what the houses should look like. They're defining their architectural standards for what their houses would look like. And they have, I believe it's 5 different architectural looks for the houses within Briley Farm. So the first you see here is what they call the colonial revival kind of architectural type for the houses. Next, please. The second would be the Florida vernacular. And I will say generally these first 2 are pretty consistent with what your standards are today. They're not too far out from that. Next, please. Next is the folk Victorian. Again, not too far away from what your standards are today. Very similar. Next, please. These next 2 are a little bit different, but I still think, generally consistent. You have this French farmhouse type of structure. And next, please. And the last is a British West Indies Bermudian type of house structure. So those are the different architectural topologies that they'd have for the houses within these 3 areas of Briley Farms. Within the standards, there's more specific standards about the heights of certain characteristics and, the more detailed kind of description of how you get to those. And again, I'll let them answer those questions about how those work. But that's what they would look like generally for it. And that's what we want to be sure that you all, as the appearance review board, are comfortable with that look of that development within the town as part of this project. Again, we as staff looking at it, and when we looked at the concept plans that they've been submitting, they do look very nice. They do look very good. And we think they could fit in well with the town, especially because of where this is located. It is isolated on the north side of the town, the lake to the spot. So it's within that very defined area within the town of Oakland. Next, please. So what would happen in terms of next steps with whatever recommendation you all would make today? This would then go to the Planning and Zoning Board at a public hearing. They would then make a recommendation. And then it would go to the Town Commission for 2 public hearings, where then they would make a final decision on approving these design standards or not. So that the process moving forward for this potential approval. Next, please. So as I said, in our review of this and working with the police and then other town staff, we do believe this is a positive thing for the town. It absolutely helps that we know what'll get built there. We remove a lot of uncertainty in terms of the design standards and projects. One of the challenges they ran into, and for those on board from your last meeting, when we had that variance, one of the problems we were running into was if you apply these standards, it has somewhat of a restriction on the house sizes. These houses are not nearly as big as the one we had the variance on. They're half that size. But still, it's hard to make them fit and work within the restrictions in terms of the widths and depths of the base of the house and those types of pieces and parts. Also, what was very restrictive was how you add on what's your code calls the components, the side wings, and how your code says they have to be set back 8 feet from the face of the house. Well, that made it hard because they were, submitting plans where they were, a foot off, which this gets to the other issue. If you look at the picture in your code, it shows it being that close to it, but the words have it at 8. So there was a lot of that kind of disconnect. And that this helps us get through that. And we think with good house architecture with the town. So that's my summary recommendation. I'll be best to answer questions, particularly in how we got here and why we're doing this. And I know the applicants here, they can probably give you more information about the details of the architecture and what they're looking to do.
Can you summarize for us, you kind of already did. How is this different from the guidelines of the doc, high level? What are some of the differences?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that one, because one thing I wanted to say and I forgot to say. In terms of the architecture or the massing, I will say part of it is really how these wings and these different pieces and parts attach and the relationship to the building. The town's code is very prescriptive on how that has to happen, and even about what can attach to what.
Mm-hmm.
This opens that up to give these designers more creativity and ability to make, these houses work with that. I think that's probably the biggest difference. In terms of zoning approval part, is one of the things they're requesting here again, which is similar to what you have in Oakland Park, is for an accessory dwelling unit. Currently within your code for straight zoning, it requires an accessory dwelling unit to be approved by the town commission through a special exception approval.
Mm-hmm.
What they're requesting as part of this, which Oakland Park has, is they would get approval if these were to be adopted to be able to do an accessory dwelling unit as a permitted use within their development. But they do within these guidelines have design standards and limitations, requirements for what those structures would be and how they would interact, be constructed within there. So there are those limitations with it. Also, this is set up, and very similar to Mark, is before anything would ever get submitted to us to the town review, we would have to have the approval of the HOA, and they will also have an HOA town architect that will review them and provide their documentation that it is compliant with these standards, because these standards are the same standards that they're adopting as part of their covenants and restrictions. So what we would have here at the town would match what they are enforcing on their side as well. So we have that ability, but I would say those are the biggest differences. They really are. I don't know, unless they're.
So somewhere outside, out building or somewhere.
You didn't hear it yet. So the setbacks are very similar. The heights are very similar. There's impervious surface limitations that are similar to what you have here. There's some, how they're dealing with the floor area, but you don't have floor area limitations within your code. But they are addressing that within their standards. But yeah, those kind of standards are very similar to what you already have. But what it does allow for is some larger houses than what they can get through the code as it's today, but not massively larger at all.
So these guidelines don't apply to phase two at all, right?
Eventually, they will.
They will. The same guidelines we're voting on today will be about for phase two, or is it going to be new and different?
I'll have to ask applicant that because we haven't had that level of discussion with that, but I think the intent was to bring, if they're not the same, there'll be standards set up for phase two as well. If they're not the same as this. So it'll come back to you all.
Do the design standards have any designated materials for the houses?
They do.
They do. For each style.
See, you want
You didn't.
They do, yeah. So,
And I are here.
yeah, but they do, they have materials for the doors, the windows, the facades, those are all as part of this system.
Yeah, I'll highlight one thing. It's interesting. You know, you all probably know Mike Morris. So Mike's great. He's been extremely helpful in the process. He was the one who kind of helped create, I think, the existing town guidelines. So we engaged Mike to design houses for us, because who better to know the design than Mike. But in doing that, we realized we submitted Mike's plans, there were some issues that came back, even though Mike designed them. So that's what kind of created this, like, well, wait, there's definitely some hurdles in the existing code. We wanted to keep Mike's vision, so it's kind of Mike combined with, there's obviously going to be a couple other builders in there, so we don't want to just pigeonhole everybody in one architect. So we also use Gary Hancock, who's really well-respected architect out of Winter Park. So Winter Park Design and Mike Morrissey kind of took, their concepts, ideas, and what we were seeing on the homes that we were producing in there. And we do have homes design that made their way through into the existing code. But we just felt like it was so much brain damage to try to figure that out. And we'd rather, kind of follow that same vision, but be able to submit homes easier, to the town that really, kind of still went along with what was initially planned for, the beauty of the homes back there, but it was just easier to kind of get through the process. And I think what Mike had originally thought was already done.
So are we saying this is a separate topic, but the design guidelines are broken now? Is that the right word for it? And they can't be used?
Well, they can be, because as Steve said, we were able to figure it out. But what happens, there's what we found out going through this discussion. There'll be a section, the side wings is actually one of the best examples that we have of what's happened. Is there's a part of your design code that shows a sketch of a building and the different components. And if you look at how it shows a side wing, it shows it, just right off the front face of the house. But then when you get to the detail page about what a side wing is and the definition and how it has to be constructed, it says in words that it has to be 8 feet from the face of the house. So in zoning code, we have to follow the words and not the pictures. And that was the big part. One of the other issues that came up was some of the numbers that were in there were flopped, like on the building width and the depth. And this was something that Mr. Morrissey pointed out when we went through this discussion with him. Is now it's not a huge issue because the code also says you can swap those two dimensions, so it's not a terrible thing. But there's issues like that and throughout there's just some internal inconsistencies. If you read, and I can't remember real well, some of these others that are there. But it just needs to go through and really vet it again to make sure that it is implementable without having the discussions that we had to have to figure out what did this really mean and what did they try to do here?
Mhm.
Because I think part of what the issue was, there was a vision in the head of Mr. Morrissey putting this together that was very good and everybody was on board with. But the way the words were written, they didn't necessarily match the vision that was coming out there. So
And this would be like a timing thing because to fix that would,
take a lot longer because there's other issues and things that would not necessarily
We
impact
asked to
them.
do that and see.
yeah.
Right.
That was the first, so it's can be fixed. And Brad said this is probably the best.
Yeah.
For this one.
Yeah, because we didn't want, because there's other things in the design code that we may have to address that don't have anything to do with, would impact them. Or it may go, and what we said to them, we have no idea once this gets opened up.
How many other,
Direction it'll go. And that, there's a lot of risk for them where they could come in with something very specific to their project and get that approved and not get stuck if things go haywire if we go the other way. I don't think they will, but it'll be probably quite a bit of discussion through that changes with looking at how much discussion was done getting to those standards.
So we're saying until those design guidelines are changed or modified, like every applicant is gonna have to go through some kind of a.
No, only if this is larger projects like this. I mean, you will see the Grove, they just submitted their application last week to do the same thing. The individual houses that are being built, by and large, very few of them end up coming under these design guidelines because not surprising, most of the permitting is within Oakland Park or exempt subdivisions. We've had maybe 4 houses in 2 years that have fallen under the design guidelines, and they were able to work through it and get through it because they weren't elaborate houses. You know, they're pretty simple houses. I think we have 2 right now that are preliminary. They're on 50-foot wide lots on the west side of town. They're able to meet it because they're just simple boxes, you know, with the porch, and it's not hard to do that.
Okay.
I know this isn't the full plan, but are there any planned green spaces or parks within the development?
Yes, I don't know that I can.
Look at that. You have that? Perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know what's on the videos. Right here. Well, this isn't doing
That one
a good
doesn't show it
depiction.
either.
It has it through the middle here, not really.
No. So yeah, for the part that we're speaking about tonight, 1B and 1A in Daniels Cove, there's not a lot of big open spaces here. Where that part of Briley Farms will be is in phase 2. That's where there's the larger open spaces and that kind of part. 1B, the way the town approved it is exactly how they're showing it in here.
There's a really pretty trail that cuts in between one and. It's got like. Great type of walkway, with a bench seating, nice landscaping, it's very well done, like Dick's Height is a lot of the landscape design that you all have probably seen before. But it's really pretty, so that walk just through there. Doing some brick, you know, inlays and the roads that are coming in, and things like that, but to Brad's point, more of the. There's more space in phase 2.
You guys have any other questions?
I have one question. So in almost every single one of these images, the house is white. Color selections,
Yeah.
but
Is that like gonna be an HOA rule or how are the colors of the?
That's
homes?
gonna be part of their lease bill is to submit, you know, their colors and everything for approval. I think naturally, I mean, you do, they say it nowadays, you see a lot of, you know. Like your open bar, and the Andy's from Element over there, so he's, you know, got a whole neighborhood of all the licenses, but, it's very nice. But, you know, the idea would be that obviously, and we think by also changing, but one of the issues we run into, I think it's a little style related, so I feel like it should have a little bit of a mix of style, which we try to create here. I think it will drive people to do some additional colors, you know, on those homes and adding texture in the doors and. You know, we're gonna, I push for, it's gonna be, you know, high-end window systems, so getting color in some of those window, you know, systems and having, you know, actually greens, blues, blacks, like, you know, so the goal is definitely. You know, try to get a lot of different. You know, variety of styles. But as a developer, we're trying not to also overreach on the builder here or the consumer. We want to give them a little, you know, give them beautiful options, but not be overbearing. It's exactly.
Mhm.
But some of those are in the Oakland guidelines too, correct, as far as colors, and so that's all, I mean, none of that will change really as far as
Well, they would not be subject
be
to
subject to any.
anything within your land development code if this were to be adopted. They would follow these standards that are here. And part of that would be because it's a unified development, so they'd have a unified development pattern, you know, within their project.
Yes, if I may, this is kind of the goal of PUD zoning. So what we're doing is setting this property up for future rezoning, which will be to PUD. The PUD zoning classification really allows for the local government and the developer to negotiate and to agree to standards which are different or maybe not even addressed in the code. So it is a flexible one. Yes, it's a flexible zoning category. If that's, Brad, is that how you would describe it?
That's absolutely right. So that's what we're doing here. We're adopting this standard specific, this Riley Farm development that are different than what you would apply on somebody outside of Riley Farm. They would sort of,
Tailor-made. I want to put it that way.
I like the designs that they are. I think that's aren't they?
Yellow one is written down well.
What do you guys think? Do you have any other questions? No?
Put it up to the public.
Okay, does the public have any comments or questions?
I do have a question. Come on up, Meredith. Yeah.
State my address.
Yeah.
Okay, Meredith Riley, 205 Riley. I do have a question about this lot, which is adjacent to lot 11. Is that where the tree currently, like, it's currently like blocked out, but I can't reach the writing?
Well, I'm gonna look at columns, look out.
The top one?
Yeah.
Okay, so will that property be then addressed at a later time? That would be a better question.
Yeah, that property. Yes, we don't own the property. Still one of the only, that's the only one that's still owned by her. So it's gonna fall.
Okay, so my question, according to this lot type is, it appears that all the homes that are adjacent to the Briley street, those garages will then face Briley, is that correct? Like. So this is Walker and this is Briley, lot 11, 8, 7.
Correct. This front door of 11
Yeah.
is facing that way.
So here's, if you look at this, actually, this is lot. Which is right here.
Mhm,
So this is Briley Avenue,
mhm.
right? This is whatever road that is, right on
Okay.
Pollard or whatever it is. So the entrance is off of Briley, but you see on the garage, it's the garage.
what he's showing her and you have it in your.
Yep.
No, he's showing the floor plan examples. I believe those are-
Yeah, it does. I was just confused by the verbiage. That sounds like.
No, and I think they're probably thinking that they're gonna space, but they actually.
No, we don't have. That. It's this page here in the document.
I appreciate it.
Andrew, could you show the board what you're showing her?
Yeah.
It's this page here, that.
On this page, so. This is, I don't know who wants to see this, but. This is an example of how these houses interact with Briley Avenue. So Briley Avenue runs here. You guys want this, Briley Avenue is here. This is actually Pollard, I believe is the road, that'll be a new road there. So these are, I think that's probably where they go out of space. You know, Briley's here is probably. Yes, there's a little. You know, and these have extra design requirements because they have, you know, they're a corner, so this, you know, concept design has a porch over here. And a porch here, so you can have two, you know, front.
Oh, where it kind of ends and then starts again.
Yeah, it ends right here. Actually, that road's not there at all. But this road comes in like this, you know, branches.
Yeah, they're nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from public? Okay. Guys. Want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I just update? So I think I emailed you guys that we're all pushing stuff down, so we have one position open. We do have some applicants, for the position, so hopefully we'll be making a recommendation at the next commission meeting and get our fifth position filled, and then as always, we'll be looking for two alternatives to add to the board too, so that we have some backup positions. So just want to update you on that.
Mr. Chairman, so two quick updates too for future things that'll be coming to you. There's two PUD projects that are, one just was recently approved by the town commission last week, Oakland Village. It is a PUD here on State Road 50 on the north side of the far east end. It's a proposed three-story mixed-use village. What that'll be coming to you in the next couple months, not like soon, but in the next couple months, because what their next step will be now that they have the PD approved, plan development approved, and their development agreement approved, their next step would then come through the appearance review process with you all to review their buildings or proposed building structures. So that'll be coming to you here in the next few months. And then Mr. Healy has another project, the 4th Street Village that's in process. That's still in process. That'll go back to P and Z on April 16th and then back to the town commission in May. And once he gets through that process, then he'll be bringing his project forward, his mixed use project, which is a bigger project. It's on about 25 acres. They're in the southeast corner of Tub and 50. It's proposed at 190 multifamily units, 150,000 square feet of office and retail. And it's a mixed use village kind of center. So if he gets that approved, that'll be coming to you all as well for the design review of that. So those are things that are coming to you next.
The first one was again.
The first one is on State Road 50 on the north side at the very far east end of the town limits, across the street from the Schmidt building.
It has a little white house with like the teal trim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it abuts the Grove subdivision that got approved just to the north.
Okay.
It's about 5 acres. So those will be coming to you in the next few months.
Great, thank you.
So.
Anything else?
No,
All right,
adjourn.
meeting's adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.